Class number 2 of the EFL portion of the teacher training is, what do we call it? Well, I've called it so many things. I hope you don't mind. This is one of those things that you've heard of, the expression both and this is both and. We could call this class specific gravity. We could call it the progressive development class. And we could call it the motivating children. I deliberately crossed that out and said, no, it's not just about motivating children, it's about motivating people. So these are all things that we're going to be discussing today. This is, to me, the core of Education for Life. To me, this part of the system is what is the most unique of any part of it. The next EFL class in January will be on Tools of Maturity, which is about teaching the whole child, not just the intellect, not just the body, but addressing feeling and will. And there are other systems that talk about teaching the whole child. There are other systems that speak of spiritual education. There is no other system that has its curriculum divided up into the 6 curriculum areas that we do. This is one uniqueness to EFL. But I feel that the central concept, the central core principle that we can always come back to when we are struggling in the classroom, when we're succeeding in the classroom, when at any time, is this concept of specific gravity, progressive development. Basically, it's a concept of energy, that we are really energy beings more than we are physical form. You know, this is getting, when I first came to Education for Life, and the book was published in '86, I was still struggling with this concept. But now it seems like it's being more and more accepted and understood generally. For example, how many of you have heard of Dr. Oz? Oh yeah, Dr. Oz. Some of us love Dr. Oz. He has a syndicated newspaper column, and you may have seen him on Oprah. And he is a physician. He's a physician, but besides being a Western trained physician, he is also very well up on alternative method, what we call alternative. In other countries, they are the method of healing. And for Ayurveda, he knows about Ayurveda. He knows about Chinese medicine. He knows about acupuncture. And he advocates all of those things, especially for preventive health. He's very, very successful, has best-selling books. And one of the things, he gets on the Oprah show, which goes to how many millions? I don't know. But he will say, your body is not a physical entity. Your body is an energy field. He has said that on Oprah at least once, I think many times, and it's in his books. So, but he's just talking about the body so far. And I don't know, I suspect he understands consciousness too. But modern medicine, we know that. We know that the brain puts out an energy field. Recent research has shown that the energy field of the heart is even stronger than that of the brain, which is a very interesting concept. There's more and more being written about the heart and the heart's influence on the brain and the whole body. For example, when the heartbeat comes into what's called coherence, then automatically the energy in the brain changes to a higher level. Some of you remember from the Becky Bailey video, basically it's a continuum. It's not this clear cut, but the 3 different parts of the brain, from the reptilian, which is basically instinctual, fight or flight, up to the frontal lobes, which is the highest center. I'm so excited about this. I love it so much that I tend to start talking really fast. I get so jazzed. So if I'm going too fast for you, or if you don't catch something, please don't hesitate to say slow down, or to raise your hand and ask a question. In yoga teaches that the first reality is consciousness. And out of consciousness, pure thought, then that manifests into energy. And then from energy comes the physical manifestation. In other words, who you are was in existence before birth and will be in existence after birth. This is just the physical manifestation right now. And even if you don't accept that, as I'm saying, even science says that we are energy fields. I've been reading lately this fascinating book to me by Leonard Susskind, who is a physicist from Stanford, I believe. And I can't think of the exact title right now, but it's something like The Black Hole War, My Disagreement with Stephen Hawking. And it's, for me, I love this topic. And so for me, it's fascinating. And I've never made it through the entire book on these physics books, like The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene, in which string theory is explained. Boy, I just love the first 4 chapters. I get so excited about it, and I never can finish them. But this one, I am almost finished because he combines a narrative with it, which is the whole, all of the people involved in physics in the past couple of decades, or even 3 decades, and their disagreements and their meetings and them as personalities and trying to come to truth, and how that happens, and how they disagree with each other, sometimes pleasantly, always passionately. And so the narrative part has kept me into it. But he goes, yes, Beth?
If it's hard to read the book, the PBS videos that they have on it is done in a way that the non-scientific mind can understand.
The Elegant Universe? Mm-hmm. Okay, she's talking about The Elegant Universe, but I'm talking about The Black Hole War.
Well, you mentioned The Elegant
Universe. Yes, and I didn't see that PBS series, and I'm so happy to hear it recommended. I'm going to see.
At the library.
The libraries probably have it, and so that would be very interesting. How many of you had a chance to read the 2 or 3 chapters from Out of the Labyrinth for this class? Great, fabulous. So you've probably heard, back in, when was it, the 70s, the first book that I can remember came out combining physics with the whole idea of consciousness, when it was the Tao of Physics. Do you remember that one? Well, this Black Hole War, and I'm not a scientist at all, so I know that I can't really explain this, but I'll tell you what I've gotten out of it, which is not only are we energy bodies, and of course we know there's practically no material reality there. It's all space. You know that, right? And it took me so many years to be able to really accept that, And I think the comparison that the author of Education for Life has been using in the last few years is to say, look at the blades of a fan when it's spinning and it looks like a solid entity. Well, that's the same as us. We're not solid. We're just... because there's an energy vibrating, it looks solid to us. I thought that was a great explanation. What you notice if you're a teacher and you talk to young people about these things, they have no trouble imagining it. It's just a reality for them. I think this next step might be a challenge for them. And not that I can really explain it, but he says that, how a hologram, when you see a hologram, the difference between that and just a painting on the wall is that you can walk all the way around the hologram, and from every side, it's 3-dimensional. So it's projected into being. It's projected into being from outside. There's these, however they do that, they project something, and it makes this hologram. But so the information's out here. The entity that you're looking at seems to be right here, but the information's out there. So is the entity really here, or is it out there? So, and he says, so think of Grant's tomb. Here's Grant in the tomb. In the same way, we as real beings, the information of Grant there in the tomb, the reality of that is out here on the sides of the tomb. But the tomb is encased in a building, so it's actually out there too. That's encased in the universe, so it's actually out there too. So we're all really holograms, and the information is everywhere. Center everywhere, circumference nowhere. Every atom in creation has full intelligence. Now, this is a really dumbed down explanation, but I find that so fascinating, and especially, and you're saying, what in the heck does this have to do with teaching kids, Usha? You are just being so esoteric. Well, let me tell you. There's energy flowing in the universe, streams of energy, and you know it. You get out in the traffic, Karen and I left at 9 a.m. yesterday. And so there was a stream of energy going up I-5. But Vidura and Bob left at what time?
2:01.
2:01. What do you think the stream of energy on I-5 was like when they hit Seattle yesterday? It was quite different, wasn't it? It was much more intense, much more of it. It was a different stream of energy. That's easy to visualize because it's right there in front of us. But there are also much more subtle streams. And they go through generations, certain generations. Let's go back to the land. Let's do that. Let's be anti-war. Let's be patriotic. There's all these streams of energy and consciousness flowing around, and we can tune into one or tune into another. What makes us happy, basically? Now, from the first class, I hope you remember that one of the principles is everyone desires happiness, and that the goal of Education for Life is what? What's that one word? Thank you, Rose. Say it out. Maturity. And maturity is what? Think about it for a moment. It's say it with me, the ability to relate appropriately to realities other than one's own. Okay? So, in the classroom, when kids are cooperating, working in harmony, they're relating to other realities than one's own, right? And when they are contractive, me, I don't wanna, I can't, get away, did I say that backwards? When they are cooperating, what did I say? They are expansive. Oh, I used the right word. Okay, and when they're the opposite, it's contractive. And so basically it all boils down to this principle. You want to always help kids to be expansive. And when they're going toward contraction, you want to change the energy to help them expand. We can't in one step go from me to I love all creatures and all the earth, I'm everyone's friend. We can't go from I'm depressed, I don't like anything to lightly I fly when I live. It doesn't work. But we can take the next step in that direction. So what can we give a name to these energies just so we can talk about them? These are all, of course, it's anytime we try to define anything with words, we limit it, right? Love, that's totally limiting. It means something different to what's totally expansive. But putting a word on it limits us. We all have a different concept of love. I'm sure the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa and such saints have a different concept of love than we have, and we have a different concept than a 2-year-old has, right? So it's the same, but we need a vocabulary to talk about it. So when we are the most expansive and including everyone in our reality and joyful, that energy we call light. And when we're the opposite, think about it, think about the language. We say we're depressed, we're down in the dumps. These feelings are universal to all cultures. Not all body language is universal to all cultures. For example, I think in some parts of India, this means yes, correct? Is that correct? I think Telugu. Anyway, some part of India, this, or is it this? Anyway. But nowhere in the world does this body language mean, I'm so happy, does it? When we're happy, smiles are universal, aren't they? So when we're happy, we say, I'm uplifted, I'm on cloud 9. Because this reflects a reality of energy in our own bodies. And those of you who know something about energy medicine, have any of you read Energy Medicine by Donna Eden? Or you know anything about acupuncture, or you know about Touch for Health, or Brain Gym, or any of those? You know that it's healthy when the energy rises. And we can even do muscle testing, and we can just do a simple thing, it's called zip up. We can do this on each other, to our energy body, and you'll test strong. And then if I come to you and I go whoosh, like this on your energy body, it'll only last for an instant, you'll test weak. So it's a universal reality that energy moving up up into ultimately the frontal lobes brings us a higher consciousness, more joy, more light, more expansiveness. And the opposite is contraction into depression and negative consciousness, problem consciousness. We've all been there, haven't we? We all exhibit all these levels at different times in our lives, but most people have a specific gravity, one that they tend to settle into most of the time. And that's the word specific gravity. So the opposite of light is heavy. Okay, and then here's the sheer genius. We're not going to call what's in the middle medium weight. We're going to call it something that brings us even more understanding into the consciousness behind these energies. And that is, who knows it? Ego active. Now, like I said, this is a continuum. They're not three exact states. There's a whole continuum. And just below ego active would be contractive ego active. I'm using above and below, but I don't know that that really is an accurate. And just above, in energy moving up, is expansive. Speaking of energy, now if you look at your handouts, you'll see the very first one, progressive development and the motivation continuum. So when you're in light, when your energy is light, you're motivated to seek truth, motivated to help others. But then when you start getting to expansive ego active, motivated to help others but also for self-gain. And you get on down into straight ego active, motivated for self-gain. And then going into contractive ego active, sometimes you can be motivated by rewards, but sometimes only by pain avoidance. And then heavy, motivated by desire to avoid pain, or unmotivated. Bruce Malner, who was a teacher at Living Wisdom School, once took some high school boys on a vision quest. Do you all know the concept of a vision quest? It's a Native American practice of, you take young men who are on the verge going from boy to manhood, and they would have to go out into the wilderness on their own and fast and commune with nature, and sometimes they'd receive their name or the spirits would talk to them, and they're old enough now to go out alone and endure. So several men took some high school boys on a vision quest, and Bruce was responsible for 3 boys. What they did was first night they all camped together, and then this was in the high Sierras, and then they spread out so that they had to be, each campsite, each individual's tent had to be not within sight of anybody else's, but the one adult had to know where, these 3 that he was responsible for were, and each day he would go walk by to check on each kid. So, and I don't remember how many days and nights this lasted, not too long, 2 or 3 maybe. And I don't know that they fast, I'm sure they didn't fast the whole time, but there were elements of all of that in it. And so here's what happened as he described it with those 3 kids. And one kid spent his entire time in the tent reading magazines that he had smuggled in that he was not supposed to bring. You weren't supposed to bring anything for entertainment. It's just you and the universe, So, and that's what he did. He just holed up in his tent and read magazines, slept a lot. Another kid, knowing a little bit about Aborigine practices in Australia, decided he would go on a walkabout. And every day he would go on long hikes and come back to the tent. And the third young man, one time when Bruce was out checking on the others, and he did a little hike, and he came back to his tent, and there in front of his tent was, in a mosaic formed with rocks, gray rocks and red rocks and black rocks and white rocks, was a mosaic art creation that represented he recognized it right away, a red-tailed hawk. And so this boy had spent the afternoon, or he'd spent probably the day before, collecting the rocks. And then he had come and made this beautiful, expansive, uplifting offering to his teacher, who he knew loved birds, and especially red-tailed hawks. Now, isn't that interesting? Now, each one represents a different reality, don't they? Of course, the thinking of others, the expansive, is the light. Which one is the heavy? Lying around reading magazines. Well, I've done it. We're not judging it. It's just a reality. And then the ego-active. Ego-active energy is characterized in the lower forms by a lot of restlessness. There's energy there. The kid's moving around, or the kid's talking, but it's restless. And then as ego-active gets more and more refined, it can be very concentrated. It can achieve great things. It can create huge businesses. It can do wonderful things when it's focused. But that's a higher form of ego-active. And then when the light energy, it can be manifesting physically, but it might not. For example, someone sitting and meditating who's really meditating, you know those Buddhist monks that they wire up their brains and they find that this part of the brain is all light, and that's where all the energy in the brain is. There's energy there. They may be sitting still, but there's huge energy, and an energy that's in communion with even a larger energy. Questions so far? Comments? When we use this term energy, we bandy this around so much in Education for Life. And let me just give you some other words that you can also think about that are related. You might even want to jot these down. I don't think they're on any of the handouts. These aren't exactly the same thing, but they're closely related. Spirit, consciousness, awareness, vibration, purpose, intention. Intention has a lot to do with it. Spirit, consciousness, awareness, vibration, purpose, intent or intention. Let's try something with intention right now. So, if this were a class of children, I would do a lot of discussing before we stood up about how you are not going to have your body touch anybody else's body, and how that some of you on the front row might need to step forward, and some of you in the back row could go behind your chairs, because what you're going to need is enough space that you can extend your arm fully outward like this, okay? So just stay, well actually you can go ahead and stand up, put your notebook on your chair, and let's do one with an intention. First of all, I'd like for you just to stand facing forward and extend your arm, whichever right hand or left hand, whichever hand is your dominant one. Look at your thumbnail. And now, turn around to your right, watching your thumbnail as far as you can. Come on, Gadget. As far as you can. And notice, then, when you get as far as you can, mark that spot by looking at what's behind your thumbnail. Whether it's a spot on the wall, it's a flower, a tree, a certain person. We hope that person doesn't move. Nobody move. All right, and come back to the front. And relax. And let's shut our eyes for a moment. And visualize yourself in doing that. Visualize your energy and your spine and your rotation around again. And this time, visualize yourself going beyond the point where you stopped before. A little bit further, a little bit further. Relaxed. And open your eyes, and let's do it again. Extend your finger, look at the thumbnail, and go around. As far as you can. And come back. Simran, why are you laughing? Tell us.
Because it went much further.
How many of you went further? It's not ever unanimous, but it really works. Now, we don't want to be unbalanced, so let's do our left hand. And around. And hold it for a minute because we're only going to do it once, so we'll hold it a little longer. All right, and you can sit down.
Worship foot ranger.
No, I mean, I don't know where I first learned that, actually. Yeah. One of the things, actually, if you turn in your notebook to the next page, you'll see you'll see a lotus. This is our new way of trying to depict visually this whole concept of progressive development. So, in the middle is the contractive heavy state. You might want to write heavy under me. It's all about an energy level that doesn't want to put out any energy, right? And the next step from that is, yes, I'll do it if there's something in it for me. You know, what's in it for me? I'll do my homework because I want straight A's because I get a lot of praise. Or I'll do my homework because whatever the external motivation might be. Might not be because I enjoy learning and I enjoy cooperating. It might be for some reward. But then you get beyond that, a little bit beyond me, and we do it for our families. And a little bit beyond that, we do it for our community. And a little bit beyond that, we identify with our country. There's a strong element of that in our country right now, isn't it? You know, the rest of the world, go away. We want what we have right here. We're going to hold on to it. A lack of expansiveness to expand the consciousness beyond that all of us are brothers and sisters on this planet Earth. So when you get out into that petals, what is that? That's helping others. It's about everyone. It's not only even about all brothers and sisters on the planet, but it's about all creatures, all life. And then beyond that, everything. If everything has consciousness, we respect everything. There's an ultimate respect there. When we're helping children, and this is another thing I don't know that this is unique to Education for Life, but it's certainly I haven't heard it other places, and it's certainly a central principle. And that is, we don't dwell on that you don't do these things that are selfish and contractive. You don't lie and you steal. You know, stealing's pretty contractive, isn't it? We don't dwell on, you don't do that because it's a sin and you're going to go to hell, do we? No. Why don't we do that? Because ultimately, does it lead us to happiness? Does it lead us to harmony? And in our classrooms, this is something that, especially as the children get older, but even kindergartners and even preschoolers can learn these concepts, that when we work together, we're happy. When we don't call each other names, when we look for the good in each other, when we help each other out when we're in trouble, we're happy. So that central concept that we do these things because they lead what? To our ultimate fulfillment as potential as human beings, yes, but that doesn't say much to a child, does it? But because ultimately it makes us happy. I think Sandy is a genius in working with kids who are leaving the feeling years and about to go in the will years. That means they're 10 and 11, 12, turning into 12. In this way. And I've seen her when some issue came up in the classroom. Like one time I remember, and these things happen, these happen in the most wonderful, perfect school, right? If they didn't, what would we be doing? And we wouldn't need to be here as teachers. So one time, someone sneaked into the kitchen and put a mustache on somebody's artwork. And maybe even wrote something not flattering. I can't remember that piece, but they certainly put a mustache. And so seeing how Sandy worked with the class on that and gathered them together and talked about, how hurtful this was, but not in a way that was, you bad somebody, you really hurt somebody's feelings, but was rather in an attitude of, whoa, somebody was feeling feisty and thought that would be cute and made a little mistake, but that's why we're all here together, is to learn from our mistakes. And I know no one wants to really hurt someone else's feelings. They didn't realize, they weren't thinking about how that would affect them. I know you all, I know your potential. I've seen how you can treat others, etc., etc. So it becomes a mistake rather than the word sin comes to mind, but practically, none of the parents that bring sending kids to our schools would really use that word, but they certainly will scold, and maybe not meaning to shame the child, but it actually does. And another point that brings up in my mind is about not skipping stages, that when you're in the heavy stage, you can't skip, I mentioned this, you can't skip to light. And if you try to force a child in a heavy stage to do that, you're doing more harm than good. Because then they can even resent the action you want them to. For example, this is one of my pet peeves. It's when someone has done something really contractive and selfish and mean to another child, and the parent says, "You apologize right now. Come on, you're going to go apologize." Well, if that person's in this stage, me, they deserved it, they started it, and you ask them to do a light thing, which is to understand that other person's reality, they might say, "I'm sorry," but they don't feel any expansion or joy from it, do they? So we want to help. So brings the next big part of this class. When we have this information, how do we help children get to the next step? But going back to your assignment for today, and we did have a written assignment, which I do want to take up if you brought the written assignment, which was the number 1. Won't go back to it right now, but I do want you to hand that to me at the break. But a reading assignment for today was to find the part in the chapter that tells you what are the signals of which one of these energy levels the children, the class, or a child is in. What are the signals? Did anybody find that page, and can they tell me what some of them are? How do we tell? Some of you maybe have perfect intuition, and you just know. The rest of us are learning, and we have to kind of look for external signals.
Posture.
Thank you. What page was that, Patricia? 88. And number 1 was body language. Remember this one? Conversely to this, upright posture, open chest. Those of you who teach young ones, don't you know some children that when they move, when they go to the bathroom, they don't go to the bathroom like this. Here's how they go. Don't they? They're almost floating like a feather, light as a feather, because the joy is just flowing through. The expansiveness is just flowing through. And in fact, that's why a lot of people love our schools, is because they're still doing that when they're 10 and 11. Conversely to some other schools, by 10 and 11, it isn't that way at all. We had a Korean woman, the wife of a pastor of a Baptist church, come visit the school Thursday morning. And she wants to, for the past 3 or 4 years, we've had Korean children come from, to stay with aunts and uncles and other relatives to learn the language better, to learn English better. And we have allowed some of them to come to we think we've had 5 or 6 total Korean kids, and they add so much to our classroom, and it's so expansive for our children to meet someone who speaks another language and their language not as well, and to have to open their hearts and minds to another reality and different foods and all of those things. So it's been a win-win for us. She wanted to bring 10 kids. So I don't know about 10 kids, but the point of bringing this story is that when she went in Sonali and Karen's classroom, and I said, "Come on, let's walk through." And we walked through, and one group was over here. They were doing some sort of game, but it was an instructional thing that they were learning. What were you all doing with those little cards?
Sign language. We're playing Go Sign.
Sign language. We were playing Go Sign. They were all learning sign language. So it was very, it wasn't absolutely quiet because they were playing a game, but everybody was really engaged. And we walked out, and she turned to me. And before we even went, she said, "Your school was recommended to me because it's cozy." That was the word she said. It's cozy. And we walked out, and she turned to me, and she said, "Their faces." I said, "Really? What about them?" And she said, I just sort of nodded. She said, "Their faces. They're all smiling. It's not like that in other schools." Whoa. In 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade, it's not like that? That is so sad. And I remember in Nitai's book, The Art of Joyful Education, which was published way before Education for Life. It was in the early years, 70s, I think. 76 maybe that came out. And that was one of the things he said. He said, when you go in a classroom, you can judge what's happening by the joy level. I thought, really? Come on, give him a test. But a test measures one thing. And real learning, real expansiveness, real leading to a joyful person, you can tell by the joy level. So in order for us to know what do we do with these energy levels, we need to know what motivates each energy level. So if you want to turn to the next page, you have some lotuses there. I'm sorry. Let's come back. Let's finish this. What are our signs? How can we tell the energy level? Yes, Marcia.
Downward gaze.
Downward gaze. And this works with adults too. How many of you, if it hasn't happened to you yet, now start looking. You know how it is, you learn a new vocabulary word and suddenly you see it everywhere? Okay, notice this. If you're ever in a group of people in a meeting and all of a sudden you notice everybody's looking at the floor like this, guess what? You've lost them. The energy's heavy.